We are pleased to have you join us here at the Mermaid Museum. This is our grand opening week. We've had really good turnout, really positive exchanges with people, so that's been super cool. This is the last evening of our marine biology lecture series with Alan Raymer, and I cannot express enough to everybody, and especially to Alan, how much I appreciate what he has shared with us from his collection to help make the museum successful. And I cannot say that without also circling back to my friends Kevin and Carol. They have contributed items, a great display on ocean ecology immersed in marine mythology. Now, tomorrow night we have our artist reception here in the gallery. This gallery is for you to come back over and over again. All the pieces are for sale. The ones that have already sold, of course, they sold on them. Saturday, we're excited to have Secretary of State Kim Wyman here at 11 o'clock doing our ribbon cutting. And then we have, I think Mermaid Chantel's here tomorrow. And then we have Una the Mermaid on Saturday and Sunday. And what's unique about Una is she comes with her. And then we have another 3 or 4 mermaids here on Saturday. We have Mermaid Aura is signing her new book. It's getting really great reviews too. And then Sunday we have our mermaid egg hunt on Easter morning from all time. So don't come knocking on our Easter egg door. However, we do have Easter brunch in the restaurant at the Sea Glass Grill. Yes, ma'am. I've never been to one of these. It sounds like it's complete chaos. So I'm going to be hiding under my desk. Because children. That's all you teachers are like, yeah, you should be scared. And then Saturday, well, Friday night, Kevin and Adrian Jones, who just bought Seafood Connection down in the harbor, are going to be doing a little cooking demonstration on some of their favorite appetizers that we'll be serving during the artist reception. And then Saturday night, we have a chowder cook-off at 5 o'clock. And I thought it would be unseemly for Westport Winery to enter it, so Kevin is entering it as our amateur competitor under the Westport Winery banner. So it'll be interesting to see who wins the chowder cook-off Saturday night. That's right before the Fisher Poet reading from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. That does need reservations, and that is in the tent. So, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce you again to my good friend Alan Raymer, who knows more than I will ever know.
Thank you, Kim. For those of you whom I've met, this first part is going to be repetitious, but my name is Alan Raymer, and I worked for 36 years for the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm originally from Monterey, Carmel, California, and I came up here to tell people I've been here 48 years temporarily, and I have no intention of going back to research, working with shrimp and clams off the coast out of Westport. I lived above the laundromat by the police station in Westport up there. Westport comply with regulations. So tonight we're going to talk about fun facts about sea life, because almost all the rules and regulations have to do with the reason why the regulations look herky-jerky to you. So welcome to come up and take a closer look. But because of COVID protocols and stuff, we're going to be asking questions as we go along, and I have some little prizes, really kind of magical. I came to realize after, so I'm not going to tell you too much more, but if you want to see what happened to me in the parking lot. So the first animal we're going to talk about just briefly is a razor clam. That's probably the #1 resource here in Washington State, sport recess. The reason for this is a large female has larger eggs, more viable, with bigger offspring. So this is what happens with the shrimp. And the kids are usually very astute about all of this over the years, and it's really remarkable because they process very quickly, and they'll ask me, well, if there's just little boys, how do we have more procreation going on? Basically, some of the kids will pick up real quickly and go, are all the little boys mating with the big girls? Yes, that's what's going on. So it's the chicken and the egg cycle. Girls have little boys grow up, become girls, and around we go. So, and the same is true with oysters. Oysters have almost all male offspring. There are a few girls born. If you're born a girl oyster, you'll stay a girl oyster. But if you're a boy oyster when you're 3 years old, you're going to become a girl. And the reason, again, bigger eggs, more viable offspring. So management of the fisheries is based on these biology of the animals. Big aggressive fish, grouper, wrasse, sea bass, angelfish, they only have female offspring. And the reason for this is a big aggressive male can protect a lot of females and protect a lot of territory. So these kinds of territorial and aggressive fish only have female offspring. When the females are about 8 years old, they all transition into the role of an active male. So the resources are managed to make sure enough of these animals escape in the smaller age group to grow up to become viable of the opposite sex. So when you go shrimping, a lot of people get mad because they have to measure their shrimp's head. And it's about 1 3/16 inch where they change sex. So the shrimp calipers for Puget Sound are geared for this measuring the head. So they have to be 1 3/16 inch. So you make sure those males can escape to become functional females. So that's just about the shrimp. And then again with more big fish, like grouper and stuff, you have to make sure enough of those females escape, become functional males. And what's really interesting too is, the little kids just really like this, is usually when you talk about the changing sex from male to female and you're in a school of children, the little boys get devastated by this because their eyes get huge right away, but you have to make it fair. So I'll talk about these grouper and these aggressive fish going from girls to boys. But there is, the kids are fascinated by this. There is a fish called the clownfish, Nemo. And Nemo, there's a type of clownfish that are males, and then they become functioning females when they're 8 years old. Because they are territorial, they live with their anemone, they live in a specific area, they're bonded. So in the movie Finding Nemo, when coral is killed by the barracuda, most people don't realize that marlin's going to change sex and go looking for a new mate. So Nemo's father is going to become his mother, and eventually Nemo's going to change sex, and Dory's going to have a girlfriend rather than a boyfriend. And the next movie would have to be called Finding Ninette. Nemo doesn't know what's in store for him, but he's going to be changing sex eventually. So all these things are to help ensure the procreation of the animals, and this is what drives the biology. A lot of things in the Northwest waters, most animals in the Northwest waters, are not very pretty. And they're kind of drab colors because we have cold water here. When you get to the warm water areas of the world, Mexico, Hawaii, Florida, Australia, is where you get a lot of variability in colors and shapes. Even though our water is cold, there are ways of, and our animals are rather drab, there are ways of telling them apart. When you harvest steamer clams in Puget Sound, they're collectively called steamer clams, but there's a number of different species in the steamer clams that make up steamer clams. And the limit is 40 clams or 10 pounds. But you need to know how to tell them apart, because there is one that can harm you at certain times of the year, and that is the butter clam. It has the ability to store toxin in its body for a long time. So there'll be beaches in Puget Sound with the international red circle and a line through them for butter clams. Butter clams have a chalky white shell and only circular rings. The other clams that we collect for steam clams have circular, concentric, and radiating lines. So the native little neck clam has both, and the manila little clam has both. The manila little clam is lavender on the inside, whereas our native little neck is all white. And they feel like a fingernail file because it's even lines going both directions. But there's one that has very prominent radiating lines. And when I go to the schools, and this is interesting how the progression has changed with children over the years, children used to know their nursery rhymes. And so this one's associated with a nursery rhyme. And I would ask the kids, what kind of shells did Mary grow in her garden? And anyhow, early on the children would say cockle shells. But now most of the children that I visited in the latter years of my career would raise their hand and go, cocktail shells. So a lot of children are growing up with cocktails in their household now. So silver bells and cocktail shells. So this is a cocktail, and it's the only one that feels like a potato chip. And I would tell the kids, ruffles have ridges, and most of the kids later in my career would sit with a blank look on their face in that commercial. They don't know about the potato chip where ruffles have ridges. So this one has ridges, and the others have rings and ridges in even amount. We have many of the largest sea creatures in the world in Washington State. And we do have the largest burrowing clam. And by the way, I'm going to ask you some questions to go along. I'm looking for people who will raise their hand, not blur it out, please.
Gooey duck.
Yeah. Yay. Gooey duck. First prize winner. Yay. And do you know where the word gooey duck comes from? I didn't know for many years. It seemed like a silly name. The gooey duck is G-O-D-U-C-K. It comes from a Nisqually word, which is gweeduck, G-W-E-E-D-U-C. It means one who digs deeply. And I don't know why we ever changed about the gooey duck, is they only have 6 months to get as deep as they can, because as they're digging, their foot is shrinking. And so whereas a lot of times your foot is proportional to the body size, the gooey duck has to get down as fast as it can because the foot is going to shrink and become like the uvula in your mouth. Does anyone know what the uvula is?
That little
flap in the back of your neck. Yeah, so that's your uvula. That's what an adult gooey duck's digger looks like. So when it's 6 months old, it'll be down about 3 feet, and the body always grows faster than the shell. But what's interesting too about the gooey duck is that it's one of the few sea creatures that we can eat. Or you tell your grandchildren, oh look, let's count the rings and figure out how old it is. That's a word going through where it joins, put it under a microscope, and we can count the rings. Now, I'm going to give you a math problem here. I've had first graders get this really quickly, and adult groups absolutely sit there staring at me. If a clam, all clams put down a ring with every tide. If there are 2 tides a day, how many rings will a clam put down at the end of a year? Hand raising.
700 or something.
No, that's not the answer.
730.
730. Yay, you get the gummy sea creatures. Every clam puts 730 rings down a year. But a gooey duck makes a hard annuli at the end of each year. And that's how we can count them. They're very long-lived. Most clams only live a few years. But the gooey duck lives a long time. There's been an ongoing kind of a oldest clam war going on between Canada and the U.S. And Canada had their record up until a few years ago of 62 years. And Washington just got their record back a couple of years ago at 64. So 64 years old. When you think razor clams only live to be about 8, it's pretty remarkable. What's also interesting is to think about this thing is entering its teen years when it's in its 20s and 30s. And it's pretty remarkable. So this is a very long-lived clam. Now we're going to talk about cousins of clams. If I have 2 shells that live buried in the mud of the sand, I'm a clam. But can you name any animals that look like clams, but they're not? Scallop. You got the hardest one right off the bat. You're very good. There you go. I'll give you the chocolate sand dollar. That's the hardest one for most people to get is the scallop. And the scallop is also called the fan shell. When I would work with the children, I'd always ask them, and they would get it quickly, and I'd go, what was the top of Ariel's bikini? And they'd go, fan shell. I'd go, okay, now we got fan shell. What's the other name? And then a kid would come up with scallop. And so we have scallops. What are others?
mussels.
Mussels, yep. Ooh, who said that?
I did. We both did.
You both did? Okay, well, you can fight over it. Since this is, okay, here you go. This is mermaid weekend. So if you have a child or a grandchild.
I have a grandchild.
You
I
do
don't
that
have
too.
it.
Okay, so we've got the muscle and the
Out
scallop.
there too.
You're missing the common one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barnacle?
No. You order these in restaurants and they got ooey gooey insides.
Oyster.
Oysters, there you go. Yeah, so oysters, scallops, and mussels. When you look at these scallops here, looks can be very deceiving. This is the world's largest scallop. It's called the weathervane scallop. This is a pink scallop. It's about full grown, or fan shells. This will be the size of a dinner plate when it's full grown. So the looks are really deceiving. This is a pink scallop here. I always tell the children, when you go to your family restaurants, this is what you see. When you get left home with a babysitter and your parents go out for a night without the kids, this is what they see. So this is in the nice dress-up restaurants. This is really, really expensive. When you're eating the scallop, all you're eating is the muscles, the muscle that holds the two shells together. And what's interesting about the scallop is it's the only bivalve with eyes. They have 40 to 60 pairs of eyes all the way around the top and all the way around the bottom. You can never sneak up on them without being seen. They see shadows and light changes, like shadows, someone trying to sneak up behind you. And what they do is they create a jet propulsion system by flapping their shells together. They can zoom sideways, backwards, and take off the ground. What's interesting about this is a very, very wasteful fishery. Because all we're eating is the muscle that holds the two shells together, that silver dollar-sized thing in the middle. What's interesting, too, is that no one has been able to answer this question, but the flesh of the females is bright orange. It's not marketable. So the boys are white inside and the girls are orange. So if you go to the Seattle Aquarium or something sometimes, when they're laying on the bottom, look open, partially open, look between the eyes, and you'll be able to tell a girl scallop from a boy scallop. So they just shuck them, keep the muscle, and they throw the rest away.
So can they tell whether they're male or female?
Just by the color.
But
Oh, no, because here we have the world's largest muscle called the sea mussel. And then we have a little blue mussel here, or an edible mussel. This one's almost full grown. This one will be a little bit larger than a ruler when it's full grown. So this one we explore. It's really important with children, adults don't do this too much, not to run. Running, the animals get crushed, you don't get to see them. And if there's things like oysters on the beach, you can have accidents. Over my career, I had 3 boys cut fingers off. I had 1 little girl cut most of her leg off. And that's one way to get a field trip to end very good. And I've had that happen 3 times. And I've had children fall and break their arms and break their legs. One field trip, we had the ambulances coming and going because the boys were hopping on and off the rocks and I couldn't get them to stop. So a broken leg would leave and we have a broken arm. And parents asked me, what are you doing to our kids? And I said, I'm trying to. Now we're going to go on to the univalves, the one-shelled animals. And the one-shelled animals, the univalves, would be called what? Snails, right, one-shelled animals. I always tell the kids Gary. As soon as I see Gary from SpongeBob, they all light up. So Gary. So the one-shelled animals are called snails. And when snails have their babies, some can be shellless and some, the advanced ones, the carnivorous ones, are born with a shell. And they lay very complex egg cases. But snails, during the dinosaur times, grew like this. They grew flat rather than round like this. And so examples of, in fact, I don't want to say it, what's an example of a flat snail? A snail that grows like this, rather than like this.
Sand dollar?
Nope.
No.
1 is hard, 2 should be easy for you. Flat snails. Scientists think that almost all shells in the ocean, geologically speaking, came from flat snails. Abalone. The torsion is like this, but it's flat. It's not raised up. Only through evolutionary period did they raise up on their side. So the abalone is a flat snail, the keyhole limpet is a flat snail, and the little hat shells or limpet shells are flat snails. What's interesting about these snails is these holes on the shell are equivalent to nostrils. And some have as many as 12 to 14 nostrils, some species. And they like to tell the children, you can imagine during cold and flu season how much Kleenex they go through. So if you have that many nostrils. So, but this is the pinto abalone, and this little red tag, they were tagging them to do some studies in the Straits. That this was a noble person of high hereditary lineage. So this is the purple shiny shell. You want a dirty, grungy shell. That means it's going to be packed full of meat, big crab and shrimp. So, but salmon have the ability to crush them, and they extract the pigment in the shrimp and the crab, and they transfer it into their flesh. So the brighter, pinker, orange, or red they are, they got into a lot of bait on the salmon. Can you name another animal that is red as little channels going towards the mouth? And that has ciliary action that channels all. But in this video I saw, they bury themselves, and they're like a package of Oreo cookies when they're out on the open coast here. And what's neat is when the surge goes back, pooping is a community act. And since the teeth are rigid, they're set up around the mouth, where the left arm of one dove grates against the right arm of the other. And that's how they grind up the food. They're arranged around the mouth. So those are the teeth of the sand dollar. Now, who are cousins of sand dollars? Can you name any animals related to sand dollars?
Sea urchin?
Sixth grade class, Sister Agatha came to that one. She stood in the back of the room. To this day, I know God placed her there for a reason, next to a little boy. And in the program, the giant rock barnacle can be up to 4 inches. So this is how fast children process information. So I'm talking about the barnacle, and it taps on its neighbor. If they would like to mate, they open their shell. And they can reach up to 4 times their body in size. So this little boy sitting next to Sister Agatha yells out, "They have a 16-inch penis?" And you should have seen the look of all the children in the classroom. I said, yes, you're correct. So they put whales to shame. If you ever have a party at your house and the party is languishing, it's a very risque film done to Southern music, and it shows this thing coming out of the shell, tapping on its neighbors, the shell's opening up, and just put that on. Barnacles tell no lies. So it's unbelievable that it's deep South music, and it shows this whole process going on. Next, we're going to go on to the shrimp, the octopus and the squid, the cephalopods, the head-footed animals. I can't bring a full life squid octopus here, but this is the little baby octopus I got when I was in high school. I've had it all these years. I found it in a tide pool and I kept it. In the octopus world, the girls rule. The girls just love this story. So a big boy octopus will be about 8 feet long, but a big girl will be in the 20 to 30 foot range. And she gets really big for a reason. We have the biggest octopus here right in the Northwest. She has to build a nest out of rocks and shells, or she'll go in a cave and glue her eggs on the ceiling above her. And then she does something that no other animal in the world has the ability to do. She incubates them, either underneath her with rocks and shells, or on the ceiling. No eating, no sleeping, no visitors, no going to the bathroom for 3 to 5 months. As I asked the children, imagine arriving to school in September, the teacher welcomes you, assigns you to a desk, and then ask you, please don't talk to anybody, don't eat, don't sleep, don't go to the bathroom, no recess until Christmas time. I don't think anyone could do that.
No.
Well, she has the ability to do this. As a result of this, her body shrinks away in volume down to almost nothing. She'll have one family at the end of 3 to 5 months, her life is over.
What?
So what happens to her body is she uses up all the energy in that mass, and she goes through a transformation. The same thing that happens to the witch in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy splashes water on her, she just disappears. So one family and her life is over. But the babies are able to fend for themselves. However, in the squid world, the mothers will lay eggs, and in the eggs are multiple babies. Octopus, one baby per egg. These eggs here had only happened to me once in my life. The squid will get together, the females, and they lay eggs in clusters. They look like these little gelatinous clear fingers with tapioca inside. They were washing up on the beach here last fall. people were sending me pictures of these big florets of jelly-like stuff. Those were squid egg cases. When they get close to hatching, you'll see the little babies inside, and they're all rolled up like human fetuses with their eggs, with their legs pulled up to their body, all 8 legs. And we were on a beach near Des Moines, and some of the kids started seeing these. And it was first graders. We were starting a field trip, and they were at the water's edge. And I could see the babies thrashing around inside, and I knew they were going to hatch momentarily. And so I ran to the store, I bought a big box of Dixie cups, and I put 1 egg capsule. We sat the children down on picnic tables. We put 1 egg capsule in each cup, and within minutes, the baby squid started busting out. And you can see their eyes blinking, you can see the chromatophores changing color on each baby squid. But unbeknownst to me, which I did not expect of, is that the children wanted to name their babies. And when you have 40 to 60 babies in a cup, you're going to have a long time before you make it to the beach. So all we did all day was name our babies and turn them loose at the water's edge. We didn't do anything else. But if it's like me, I will always remember that field trip. It was the only thing we did that day was name our babies and turn them loose. So the other thing you'll see on the beach is
How many eggs do the octopus lay?
probably upwards of about 500 individuals. These we talked about the other day. These are mermaids' purses here. You'll see on the beaches, Lake Winter here. These are egg cases of skates. Sharks lay egg cases too. This is the big wing skating's purse. I was told if you watch the Wild West movies and stuff, you'll see the young women walking on the street carrying handbags with castles on the end. I didn't pay attention to that when I was a kid, handbags walking down the street. But anyhow, now they're associated with Ariel, or a woman living in the ocean, and that's how they got the name Mermaid's Purse. And children that go to the beach a lot, I can always tell, because they'll run up to it and go, look, I found a mermaid's purse. So that's what you can look for on the beach. The kids love looking for these. Then we have the little baby skate here. We do not have stingrays in Washington. Stingrays like warm water. We have lots of skates. It's a stingray without a stinger, but they have a tail like a dragon with lots of little finlets on the side. So this is a little baby blackwing skate here that came out of one of the eggs. I brought one home from the beach one time, and I thought it was deceased. And a week later on my deck, I saw it moving. It was winter time, and I was devastated, and I opened it up and it had 3 pups inside. So I gave 2 away, and I kept 1. This last thing I want to talk about is the little baby shark. Kids love sharks. And what I like to talk about here is there's 3 different ways. All different animals have babies in different ways. Sharks have 3 different ways they can have babies. They can lay an egg and swim away. Not very effective. No one takes care of it. So the chances of survival are not very good. So the second way sharks are born is mother retains the egg in her body, it hatches, it grows for a while, and then she gives birth. But in those sharks, the first one to hatch to the left uterine number. So he's working the library based on the Dewey Decimal Number. I came back the following year, and Norman ran up Dewey Decimal Number, or are you on now? Every year I came back, I would see him. And she said, yes, he and his friend own Pacific Oyster there in South Bend. He played to us read books all day long too. So I said, would you tell him, she told me his age, he's in his 30s. And I said, would you tell him that I still remember our experience that day in the classroom regarding sharks? And she was just absolutely amazed, but it's interesting to finally find out what happened to Norman after all these years in the classroom. So I'm going to close with that, but I want to tell you something interesting now that happened to me last night in the parking lot here. I don't consider myself religious. I consider myself spiritual. I'll just come right out. I believe there is a higher plan, there's a higher power, and things happen for a reason. I've had a couple experiences in my life that I know there's something higher than me that I don't understand. But last night, when I was getting ready for the program here last night, I forgot something in the car. And I went out to the car to get it. And when I was coming back in here, there's 2 mermaid statues right outside the door. So when you're coming from the parking lot, the mermaid on the left something pink caught my eye. And I glanced down, and if you're familiar with the Grace Harbor Rocks program, where people are hiding rocks all around them, a lot of communities are doing this now. So I bent down when I was coming back in. There was a rock there, a mermaid rock, a beautifully painted mermaid rock to the left. It was in the gravel, tucked into the gravel there. And I picked it up, and it said on it, it had a beautiful image of a mermaid's tail, it was all pink, with sparkles and stuff on it. And the top of it said, "Make waves." And when I flipped it over, it says, "Help protect the oceans." So when I drove home last night, I thought, this rock is Kim. Make waves, which she does very well, and help protect the ocean, which is what all this is all about. So I went home and I thought, this is so cool. So I posted it online about 11 o'clock last night, and the woman who painted it got back to me around midnight last
Oh
night.
my
I was
gosh.
getting ready to go to bed around 12:30, and she saw it. The rock was painted 2 years ago, and it's been hidden all over Grace Harbor County. So for 2 years, it's been traveling around, but the weekend that this is going to open, it's here. So I brought it with me tonight, and I thought it needs to go on Kim's desk as a celebration. Come up here, Kim. It needs to go on her desk as a celebration of this museum, because she's making waves and she's helping to save the ocean.
That's really cool.
Isn't that cool? It's time
I saw it out there, but I never turned it over.
So anyhow, I want you to have this. I thought this needs to go on your desk, because this is what this is all about.
Yep, and glitter.
And her name is Deborah Holmberg. And
Wow.
she said she painted 2 years ago, and people have been telling her where it's been moved around. And it landed here at the opening of this event.
That's cool.
So I want you to have it. Does anyone have any questions? I thank you for coming. You're welcome.
Back in the very beginning, you were saying they changed in 8 years. Is there something that's going on?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you ask that. There are hormones in the body. It's like with the shrimp. I've watched a film about this. There's not testosterone, but there's certain triggers that will kill the boys' enzymes in the shrimp and trigger the females' enzymes and to take over. So there's they have both, but one is quiet. Not essence, something that's what? Quiescent, yeah. And then all of a sudden it's triggered when they get to this certain peak that the other hormones start to die away and the other ones take off. So yeah, but I don't know what kind of hormonal balance triggers that change.
What was the name of the animal that has to sit and like produce eggs or produce babies and not eat or talk to anyone?
The octopus.
Yeah.
Octopus.
There's a really good movie, I don't know if you've seen it, called
My
The
friend, the
My
other.
Friend.
Yes, I watched that. Yeah, watch that. My Friend the Octopus. It follows her all the way from the baby, growing up. She builds a nest to raise a family, and this man adopts her as his friend. And he watches her have babies, and then he sees her die. And it's like losing a friend. Yeah, that's someone sent it to me. It's pretty moving. I mean, you don't think a human would cry over an octopus dying, but the bond that these two, they touch hands, the tentacle to hands, so they greet each other when he goes down to see her.
So
Yeah.
how long do they live then?
It's probably 3 to 5 years. Yeah, and so like the Port Townsend Marine Science Center usually tries to get a new girl every few years and then grow her up. And when she's getting close to reproductive age, turn her loose so she can raise a family. So they usually start over with a new one every few years. Yes.
I was looking at last week, somebody called white king salmon.
Yeah.
What makes them white?
They didn't eat any, when the smolts of the fall run Chinook do not leave until after all the baby krill, shrimp, and crabs are settled down. So they don't ever get to feed on the animals that would turn their flesh white, or turn their flesh red, pink. And the more vibrant, I've been out in the ocean here with the coho, their bodies are ready to explode. They're so full of little baby Dungeness crab. And those are the ones where you get almost red flesh. Because they extract the keratines out of the baby crab and transfer it to their flesh. And that's why they do it in fish farms.
And one last question, what the heck is a curry?
So thank you, everybody.
Are there any other questions?